This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, where researchers come to learn, innovate, and connect.
I was charged with finding persons of color. So I was definitely seeking out. But even if I saw a white person who had the skill set, I would still reach out to them as well because we're really interested in skill sets too.
Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for prospect research professionals. I'm Jennifer Filla. Today, I'm talking with Christal Cherry, Principal and CEO at The Board Pro. Hello, Christal. Thank you for joining me today on Chat Bites.
Hey, Jen. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, I can't wait to talk with you about your contribution to the book, Collecting Courage, Joy, Pain, Freedom, Love, and how professionals can play a part in changing the prospect ID and board nomination process. But first, I'm hoping you'll give us your backstory. You know, like the Marvel comics. Everybody's got to have a backstory.
Certainly. So I am a recovering fundraiser. I was in the nonprofit sector as a fundraiser for 23 years, working primarily in higher education for the first half of that, and then moved into faith-based spaces, working with seminaries and faith-based groups. And then I moved to human services, working with homeless populations and filling the education gap and the hunger gap. And then after that, I had enough of fundraising and I wanted to do something else. So I became a consultant. I worked at a consulting firm for a while doing some fundraising with them, but that's where I really started doing some board work and really working with a lot of boards about governing and making sure that they were doing what they're supposed to be doing to govern, and really understood and realized how much boards need help. And so when I decided to step out on my own, I decided that was the space that I was going to stay and play in. And it has been a wonderful, wonderful journey so far because boards are a mess and they need us. They need us consultants to come in and provide them with some support and some counsel on how they can do a better job. And I think so far in the last 2 years since I've been doing the work, I feel like I've made an impact. I feel like I'm being received well. I'm certainly learning a lot. And I'm just having fun. So it was a good decision to move a little bit away from fundraising and into board work. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Wow. So consulting is this thing that a lot of people are like, oh, that looks like so much fun. You know, you get to play and do the work you love without all the problems. And typically that's not quite how it goes. Well, has it been as seamless as you make it sound, or like?
Oh, no. First of all, you work like a Hebrew slave. You work more than you've ever worked in your entire life. The lights don't go out until midnight. And so I feel like I work more as a consultant than I did, the 9-to-5 gig, because, after the kid goes to bed and the news goes off, I warm up that computer and I'm back on. So I am working all day, all night. But it's nice because my schedule is flexible. So if I need to run out during the day and run an errand or go to the doctor or go to my son's school, I have time to do that. But I'm probably going to be back on later on that night. And, here, particularly in this pandemic space, it can be lonely, because you're home. Many people who are working from home may feel this, but you're home working by yourself. And you don't have a team. You don't have a team, colleagues who you can call, who work at the same place you work, and you all can talk about, the meeting that's coming up or the agenda or just gossip about other people. And so you have to be real intentional about finding your tribe. And so I have a cadre of consultant friends who we do that now. We call each other, we talk to each other about our clients, and, we give each other counts if asked, and we support each other when we have wins, and then when we have losses, we hug each other up and love each other up. So you have to be real intentional about finding your tribe in this space. And then, of course, you're towing the line because you're a consultant, but you're not an employee. And so you want to make sure that you want to get involved with a nonprofit so that you can understand the culture and understand, how things are going there and how to best work with them. But you got to remember that you're just a consultant. You're not employee. So you have to toe that line between being both. And then there's the part about being paid, right? And so as a consultant, You send those invoices in and expect payment on the 10th of the month or whatever, 8, 10 days after you sent it. And then when the checks don't come in, now you're making those calls like, hi, just wanted to send you a gentle nudge. Just wanted to see if you had received the invoice. It's the 15th of the month. I had not received payment, and so you have to do that a little bit. So there are definitely some challenges with consulting that you probably don't have to deal with when you're working a 9 to 5. All that infrastructure stuff, like, having, Calendly set up, having QuickBooks set up, and having all the things that you need to have to make sure that you can operate as a business, because just because you're a consultant doesn't mean that you know all the ins and outs of running a business. And you got to have your paperwork and your receipts. And I mean, Jen, how hard it is. And if you don't have someone who can help you with those things, you're going to have a problem.
I love how you gave it a nice balance. I mean, there are some real wins in working for yourself, but you have to be eyes wide open about the work that,
Yes.
is involved, the additional skills you need beyond
Yes.
your core skill set.
Absolutely.
Sure. And then I noticed you've been involved in AFP, been a contributor to the book, Collecting Courage. And I'm wondering, how do those kinds of things impact your career?
Yeah, this last year or two, we've all gone through so much with this pandemic, and in many ways, it's crippled us. But for some of us, it has really helped us to flourish. And I will say that this past year, with some of the social unrest that's happened in the country, there's been this emphasis on zooming in on Black issues. Of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion is the new hot term, and there's all the acronyms that come with that. And so organizations who are looking to do better by creating a culture of inclusion and belonging are looking for consultants of color. And so all of a sudden we became the flavor of the month. And, my inbox blew up because I had so many people who were looking for board consultants to come in and work with their boards to help them recruit diverse board members, or help change the culture of their board, or have some conflict resolution training. And, I just happened to be the right color, the right gender, and in the right place in the right time. And so for me, that has been absolutely tremendous. I had been involved with AFP for many years. I was on the board of AFP back in the early 2000s before I became a mom, and then took a break, and then rolled back on the board again a few years ago. And it was quite different. Yeah, of course, the whole board was completely changed, a lot younger. They want my old head back for some wisdom, I suspect. And now I've rolled off, but I'm still involved because our National Philanthropy Day event is coming up on November 4th, and I am chairing the Teen Volunteer of the Year Committee. So we just identified 2 teams that we're going to honor for doing tremendous work. So of course, being a part of AFP as a fundraiser just makes sense. It keeps you in the industry. It keeps you in the know about what's happening in your local area. The Greater Atlanta chapter of AFP is a very huge chapter, a very active chapter. We do well with our membership and have wonderful events. And so being a part of that network just makes sense here in Atlanta if you're in nonprofit work, because everybody knows everyone, and everyone knows who's getting the money, who's moving around to different roles, who the leadership is, and it just makes sense to be a part of it. So yes, so being a consultant and being in an AFP has certainly helped me to move forward as an independent contractor in this last year or two.
That's great. And I really want to ride that wave, when we can focus now on something different, and
Yes.
everybody's minds are there. And I really want to apply that in research. And that's what I've got you here today. I am very curious to hear your take on a couple things, and then see how we can apply that in the back end. We're always behind the scenes, but
Right.
research does get charged with helping with board nominations. Now, the great news is when they actually get charged with, let's source some names, right? That often doesn't happen. Many times it's just reactive. But when we have an organization that really wants to get more inclusive at the top, they often come to research and ask us to help them nominate. Now, the pressure for nominating names of great wealth, or sort of what's been the typical on the board, highly networked, has a lot of money, the local philanthropist. And when we're not seeing that, or we don't know how to make the case that someone is that, it just looks a little different. I'm curious if you have any stories to share, or any ideas about, or what you've done to help organizations look a little further, like change some of the practices that they've had in the past to open it up a little wider? How have you seen that play out?
Great question. Thanks, Jen. Yes. So as part of the work that I do search. I do board searches, and I don't do the wealth screening stuff like you do. Mine is all legwork. Mine is all footwork. So for instance, I just closed a search that I was doing for an organization that's located in Keller, Texas. I'm here in Atlanta. They're in Keller, and they were looking to diversify their board. Now, in this particular case, they weren't necessarily looking for CEOs or top level executives. They wanted mid-level career folks who would be willing to come to meetings and have the time to come to meetings and actually do work. And so it was more of a working board than a top level board. But nonetheless, me being here in Atlanta and them being there in Texas, provides a challenge because I'm not there. The search took me 6 months, so it's not an overnight, quick, dirty success. You have to put in the work and be strategic and do the research. And so for me, I started out by doing research about the local churches that were there in Keller. I started doing research on businesses that were in Keller, and really went to LinkedIn and started looking at people who worked at those businesses, who worked at those companies, and reaching out to people and just saying, hi, I'm a board consultant. I see you work for Axio and you're located in Keller, Texas. I'm representing an organization that are looking for professionals like you. Here is their website. Please take a look at their mission. If you're interested, please send me an email. And I got a few responses back, believe it or not. I mean, complete strangers, right? But I just looked at their LinkedIn profile, and based on what I saw, they had 15 years experience. They're now at a director level or senior director level role. They may have been a person of color. In fact, I was charged with finding, persons of color. And so I was definitely seeking out. But even if I saw a white person who had the skill set, I would still reach out to them as well, because we're really interested in skill set too. And so I would do the research on LinkedIn. I posted on, I don't know how many websites, BoardNet USA, Work for Good, ImpactOpportunity.org. And then I reached out to Black fraternities and sororities who were in that area. Many of them had their own chapters. And so I reached out to the heads of those fraternities and sororities. I contacted the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I contacted the African American Chamber of Commerce. I contacted a couple of radio stations, right? Like, I would just do my due diligence and who do you know? Who should I be talking to? It's a lot of work. And, if you're a board member or even a staff person, you may or may not have time to do that kind of work, which is why you hire someone like me. But I'm always on the phone. I'm always sending emails. I'm always prospecting. I'm reaching out to people. And because I'm the kind of person who's not scared to do that, you have to have a natural personality or a learned skill to do that. But I'm not afraid of rejection. I'm not afraid of someone saying, who the hell is this crazy lady? Why are you in my inbox? You have to be ready for people to say, absolutely not. I'm not interested. Please don't contact me again, which no one does. But you might get someone who's like that. But, for someone like me who's not scared to do that, I just call every time I get a lead about, you should contact so-and-so. My cousin works at Home Depot in Keller, whatever. I just called everybody I could find who was in that area because they wanted people who lived in that city. Now, Keller is right on the borderline of Fort Worth. So it was Fort Worth, Keller. So it was interesting. And after 6 months, I was able to identify 6 people, but they chose the 4 that they wanted. And I found a Hispanic woman who was a bigwig at a real estate company there. I found another gentleman, a white guy who had been a CEO of a tech company. I found a Black woman who is the director of human resources for one of the school systems there. And I found a Black guy who worked at one of the alarm companies. I can't figure if it was ADT. I think it was ADT. He's the senior director. So I found professional people. It was a nice cadre of diverse candidates who many of them had children who went to school in Keller, and they either lived in Keller or Fort Worth. But I found them because of the months and months of calling and just prospecting and emailing to find the right people. And that's really what it takes. So that is my way of doing research. I'm sure you probably have your own way, particularly when you're looking for high profile people. But I'm willing to do the legwork and make the phone call to find the right people. And then after I interview them and vet them, then of course I send their names on to the nominating committee of the board, who then interviews slate that I present. And then of the 6 or 7 people that I sent, they chose 4. So that's a 6 month process, and it's not easy. It's laborious. I love it because I get to meet a lot of people along the way, and have even gotten some business from it, from folks who I've started calling who may or may not been interested in serving, but who said, "Hey, wait a minute, I serve in a nonprofit. Do you help boards out with so and so?" And I'm like, "Absolutely. Well, we'd like to talk to you." So it's a great way for me to even get new clients.
That's great. That's great. And it's the perfect story because I heard a few things in there. One, that you were looking for skills, and having you as the consultant with, you know, your holistic range of experience there is a great expert voice, because inside the house, the researcher can ask for those skills and sort of prompt, but it's really managing up most of the time. So we don't always get listened to. And that can be an issue, or it's so many layers down that the request came to us, so we can't ask the person directly. We can't talk to the president or CEO directly, which, you know, is challenging, adds a layer
Yes.
of challenge. But what you talked about is great. We don't make the phone calls, we don't email those folks, but it doesn't mean you can't find them and pass them along to the person who does. And
Right.
when I was looking to create a diverse panel for a presentation, I wanted different voices. It's tough. Like, people don't always make good presenters, right? But
Right.
I had a client that we were doing this work with, and she was amazing. Just really impressed me as being top notch. And when I did ask her, I didn't see that she was speaking anywhere else or had done anything like that. But I thought, you know, let me ask her. And she said to me, you know, I was just thinking I need to start doing that. I'm at this point in my career where I would really like to get out there. And if I hadn't asked, I would have never known. So I'm all with
Exactly.
you. Like, go ahead and look for those business folks. And just because they haven't served on another board doesn't mean they
Right.
wouldn't be a good board prospect if all the other criteria fits.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, and you also said a few other things that were so key. So just unpacking this here, you talked about the LinkedIn. And one of the things that happens with LinkedIn, and you did a blog post also that really moved me. When you go to LinkedIn for a company page, you can click on people and see all the people involved, like people that are employees. And you said in a blog post that, you know, if you have a company and every single employee is white, you got a race problem. And I was like, wow, like there it is, black and white, you know, but it's hard to see diversity just on a picture. Like, that's not a perfect or accurate way of doing it, but it helps. And you can do that on LinkedIn. You can take a company and you can see all 300 some people and page through those pictures to get a feel for, is this a company that supports diversity, and could I find a good board prospect here?
Yeah, well, I'm going to say, or a company that supports your mission. So, for instance, I had a client who was working in human trafficking, and come to find out, there are certain companies for which that's their priority. I know Delta is a company, but they didn't have anyone from Delta on their board. And so I went to LinkedIn and, of course, typed in Delta. Of course, you're going to get a gazillion hits. But the fact that Delta has made this a mission that they have embraced and that they're going to support, but they didn't have anyone on the, no, this was a small nonprofit, but to have someone from Delta on that board would just make sense. And I was able to find someone just by doing exactly what you said. I went to LinkedIn, went to Delta, found folks who lived in the area, started calling and prospecting, and found someone. So absolutely.
Perfect. Perfect. And you said another thing that really struck a chord with me. You talked about looking for or calling up and checking in with fraternities and sororities. So there are definitely associations for all kinds of industries. There's many ways in which people demonstrate their community involvement. So even though we're not seeing somebody show up in the same way as our traditional board members, maybe like they haven't served on a gazillion boards, et cetera, it doesn't mean they don't have leadership experience. We just need to look in different places and promote that, like call it out. This is leadership experience. And that's beautiful. I just love your creativity in sourcing. And I love that you get to call these people. I find that fun too. That's how we met.
Well, sometimes I get a gazillion, voice messages, but that's okay. I leave messages, I call, I text, I do everything. And they probably just call me back because they're like, if this woman don't stop calling me. And so, but after a couple of times, if I don't get a response, I move on. Of course, I don't stalk people, but I am persistent and I am clear about what it is I want. And then, I'm able to ask questions about, how much they know about board service. And I'll ask them, what does board service mean to you? The responses are all across the board. As I can gauge from their responses, how much even those who have served on the board, if I ask them about financial stewardship or if I ask them about recruitment, and I can just, based on their response, know how much they know, which doesn't necessarily eliminate them. It just means that if they were to be chosen, and I'm real transparent with the organization, I think this guy would be great, but he's probably going to need some training, some additional training on what being a board member really is. And some are okay with that and some are not, but I'm able to gauge from their responses, how ready are they?
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you have turned out to be quite the true researcher, which is so much fun to get to hear from you. Before I let you go today, I can highly recommend your book, Collecting Courage, where you've contributed in the joy section. Love that joy about you. But I'm wondering if you have any other resources that you can recommend for prospect research professionals so we can keep up and challenge our best practices and our perspectives around fundraising.
I certainly have an e-workbook on how to train the woke board about racial inequality and equity, and that can be found on my website in the store section. It's called Silence is Not Golden. It's $37, and that would be a wonderful resource. But also just get support from your local, your local community. Whatever resources are in your community, check with AFP, check with United Way to see. Here in Atlanta, the Atlanta Women's Foundation are always looking for good board members, and they also have a program where they train women how to sit on the board. And then once they graduate from the program, they're looking for board seats. And so they have a list, a ready list, a built-in list of individuals who are looking to serve on board. So you just have to be creative when you're looking and find out what resources are in your local community to see if they can be a source of support for you.
That is great advice. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you again for having me.
That was Christal Cherry, Principal and CEO at The Board Pro. She may be a reform fundraiser, but she certainly is a fabulous researcher. If you want to get more perspective on diversifying your board, check out her workbook, Silence is Not Golden, a workbook for creating woke boards, by visiting her website at www.theboardpro.com and clicking through to the store. And while you're reading, don't miss out on the new book, Collecting Courage, Joy, Pain, Freedom, Love, which can be found at www.collectingcourage.org. Christal contributed to the Joy section of that book, and the Institute is going to have a full book review on our blog soon. Because what researcher doesn't love a good book? Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come check out the Prospect Research Institute's learning community. It's a membership community with powerful resources, great discussions, and comprehensive courses. Check it out at member.prospectresearchinstitute.org. I'd love to have you join me as a member of the learning community. See you there.